My subject is relatively simple compared to Brigadier Arora, the diagnosis and management of resistant hypertension. As we all know, the hypertension is a very common cardiovascular problem, and about 5 years ago there was a statistics which said that hypertension is a key determinant of cardiovascular morbidity and mortality, directly accounting for approximately 10% of deaths in India. This is an Indian data. And south part of the country has come out 2 years ago that almost 25% of the urban population and 10 to 15% of the rural population have hypertension. And similar to what is pattern seen across the globe, hypertension in India follows that typical rule of halves, whereby only half of the patients in the population who are hypertensive are really diagnosed. Only half of those diagnosed are being treated, and only half of those treated are adequately controlled. So in end, only 12% of the overall hypertensive are adequately controlled. This is across the globe, and similar pattern is found in India also. What is resistant hypertension? Resistant hypertension is when the blood pressure remains above the goal in spite of concurrent use of 3 classes of drugs, and ideally one of those 3 classes of agents should be a diuretic, and all agents should be prescribed at a optimal doses. Use of diuretic is recommended but not required before one labels a patient as resistant hypertension. Doses should be optimal but not necessarily maximal before diagnosing resistant hypertension. And there is another entity, controlled resistant hypertension. There are patients who have high blood pressure but they are controlled with use of 4 or more drugs. They are also resistant hypertension, but they will be called as controlled resistant hypertension. Definition of resistant hypertension does not apply to the patient who have been recently diagnosed with hypertension. Resistant hypertension is not synonymous with uncontrolled hypertension. Uncontrolled hypertension includes all hypertensive patients who lack blood pressure control under treatment, those who are receiving inadequate treatment, those with poor adherence, those with undetected secondary hypertension, and those with true treatment resistance. So resistance hypertension is a type of uncontrolled hypertension, but uncontrolled hypertension itself is an entity. And around 25 to 28% of the patients among the hypertensive remains uncontrolled, and out of that about 15% are true resistant hypertension. And we all know in the practice that resistant hypertension is a primarily systolic and age-related problem. We see a lot of elderly people whose systolic blood pressure is not under control. In most of the studies, diastolic blood pressure goal was achieved in more than 90% of the patient, but systolic blood pressure goal was achieved only in 60 to 65%. And true resistance was seen in about 15% of the patient. Now, how we evaluate and manage these patients who appears to have resistant hypertension? First thing is that we have to exclude, number 1, pseudo-resistance, and number 2, secondary hypertension. What is pseudo-resistance? Pseudo-resistance situation is lack of blood pressure control with appropriate treatment in a patient who does not have resistant hypertension. And when we are working out this situation, one need to know what are the causes of pseudo-resistance. Improper blood pressure measurement, mostly in elderly people because their arteries are atherosclerosed and heavily calcified. White coat effect, poor patient adherence because of the side effect of medication, because of complicated dosing schedule, because of the poor relation between the doctor and patient, inadequate patient education, memory or psychiatric problem in a given patient, cost of medication. Second problem is related to the antihypertensive medication itself. If it is prescribed in inadequate doses, inappropriate combination, and physician inertia, failure to change or increase the dose regime when not at goal. We keep on carrying with the similar dose. This is a typical physician inertia in a given patient. We need to identify while excluding pseudo-resistance, identify and reverse some of the contributory lifestyle factors like obesity, physical inactivity, alcohol consumption, high salt, low fiber diet. We should inquire whether patient is adherent with prescribed regime. Very important is obtain the home, work or ambulatory blood pressure reading to exclude the white coat hypertension, because many time in clinic we find there is hypertension, but when ambulatory blood pressure monitoring is put and we find that there is a proper nocturnal dip, the blood pressure at home is normal compared to what is at clinic. So ambulatory blood pressure monitoring forms a very important aspect of assessment of the patient and ruling out the pseudo resistance. We need to identify some of the offending drugs and over-the-counter things available which causes the resistant hypertension, and commonest is this anti-inflammatory drug, oral contraceptive, nasal decongestant. These are the common things which keep raising the blood pressure. So we need to identify and stop this offending agent. Secondary causes has to be identified. Commonest secondary causes are obstructive sleep apnea, renal parenchymal disease, primary aldosteronism, and renal artery stenosis. These are the 4 common causes of resistant hypertension, but there are some uncommon causes which we come across: pheochromocytoma, Cushing syndrome, hyperparathyroidism, and aortic coarctation. So one need to evaluate all these conditions. The obstructive sleep apnea, it is one of the very common disorder associated with resistant hypertension in a population. Almost 24% of the men and 9% of women are suffering from obstructive sleep apnea, and there is a very high prevalence of resistant hypertension in patients with obstructive sleep apnea. Almost 96% of the patients with obstructive sleep apnea and 65% of the women have resistant hypertension. The possible mechanism which has been implicated for this high prevalence of resistant hypertension is in obstructive sleep apnea is increased sympathetic activity. They have increased aldosterone level. There is increase in the reactive oxygen species, which results into the reduction in nitric oxide bioavailability, which raises the blood pressure. In patient with obstructive sleep apnea, there is a blood pressure increase during the progressive stage of the sleep in the night. There is a significant correlation between the aldosterone level and severity of obstructive sleep apnea. And in the patient with obstructive sleep apnea, there is a chronic parapharyngeal fluid retention which is mediated by excess of aldosterone. And in the night, there is a rostral fluid shift from the lower extremity to the upper one that contribute to the worsening of obstructive sleep apnea and therefore resistant hypertension. There has been a study which shows that aldosterone excess worsening severity of obstructive sleep apnea is a study which showed that reduction in severity of obstructive sleep apnea after the 8 weeks of treatment with spironolactone, and that's we will discuss. The spironolactone has come as one of the backbone in treatment of resistant hypertension. Another issue is a primary aldosteronism. This is seen in 11 to 20% of the patient with the obstructive sleep apnea, and compared to that classical Conn syndrome, picture of biochemically conformed primary hyperaldosteronism remains diverse. More often imaging is negative. It remains idiopathic, and hypokalemia is usually a late manifestation, and pneumokalemia is quite common, and therefore we miss the diagnosis of primary hyperaldosteronism. Another condition which can cause resistant hypertension is renal artery stenosis. Renal artery stenosis, renovascular disease is found in almost 20% of the patients, but the role of such lesion in causation of hypertension is unknown. We do diagnose during routine angiography, but it has to be confirmed by proper imaging and functional testing whether this is the cause of the hypertension in a given patient. So there is a battery of investigation to exclude the secondary causes of hypertension before we switch on to the real management. When we go for management, the first step is the re-emphasis on the lifestyle modification. All these lifestyle modification like weight reduction, dietary restriction, sodium restriction, physical activity, alcohol intake in moderation, they all have impact, and they lower the systolic and diastolic blood pressure, not very significantly, but yes, to quite a good extent, and therefore our first emphasis should go on to the controlling the lifestyle. Then comes to constructing a very potent antihypertensive regime for this patient with resistant hypertension. Some of the principle we should adhere to is that one should not accept blood pressure that are not at goal. There are still a lot of things one can do to control it. Revisit the initial regime of the patient and ensure optimal doses of the drug and their combination. Do not keep adding medicine. Appropriate and optimally dosed 3-drug regime should suffice most of the time about the blood pressure control. Adding multiple additional drug has potential for serious side effect, and attempt to find an underlying cause and tailoring the treatment to the cause is a must in any given patient. One should see whether the doses are appropriate or not. Example, we use carvedilol. We use it at 3.125 or 6.2, which one should go for a maximized dose. Low dose diuretic will not be working in a patient with chronic renal disease and may have a substandard effect. So one should look for a optimal dosage pattern. Adding a complementary agent from another class of the antihypertensive may be superior to maxing out single agent first. Doubling the dose of one drug had approximately just 1/5 of the equivalent incremental blood pressure lowering effect than adding another drug of another class, and therefore one should look for that kind of combination. Perform a diuretic review, because diuretics are mainstay in the treatment of resistant hypertension, and studies have shown that this patient with resistant hypertension frequently have inappropriate volume expansion, which contribute to the resistant state of their hypertension, and use of long-acting thiazide may be most effective in many of these patients with resistant hypertension. One of the drug which is old one but has been revisited, that is chlorthalidone, that may give more bang for the buck than standard hydrochlorothiazide. Chlorthalidone is more potent than hydrochlorothiazide. It has a longer duration of action. It gives better control of blood pressure, and 1 month treatment of chlorthalidone translates to 1 additional day of life. And one of the studies very nicely concluded that 23 years follow-up of that cohort, chlorthalidone can be a gift that keeps on giving. Thiazide diuretic may lack effect at a lower GFR, so when we are treating a patient with resistant hypertension and chronic renal disease, then one should look for GFR. Thiazide diuretic may not be effective, furosemide may be a better option, and because of shorter half-life, one may require to use furosemide in a twice dosing schedule rather than a single dose. Look for the fact that patient is taking beta blocker. Beta blockers are no longer acceptable first-line treatment for hypertension unless there are compelling indication like coronary artery disease or congestive heart failure. One of the agent, that is atenolol, this has been in arena for more than 3 decades. Atenolol is known to increase the central aortic pressure. More and more importance is going towards the central aortic pressure. Ideally, one should switch over this atenolol to dual acting beta blocker, one which has an alpha and beta blocking effect like labetalol or carvedilol, because this combination has additional lowering effect on blood pressure. They produce a better left ventricular and vascular coupling, and carvedilol does not increase in insulin resistance. So one should look for this combination. When you snooze, you lose. Nighttime hypertension. Similarly, those patients who have a chronic renal disease, night time is a right time, and therefore use a long-acting long half-life agent at night rather than in the morning in these patients with resistant hypertension. Alpha-adrenergic blocking agents are a very dear drug for the urologist, but it should not be used for monotherapy in patients with hypertension. Should be used as an add-on for resistant hypertension. It may cause urinary incontinence, especially in the female. Use of this agent, clonidine, it lacks any outcome data and may aid to the adverse reaction. Hydrogen role is questionable, does not have much evidence for its efficacy for prevention of cardiovascular benefit when used in patients with essential hypertension. Minoxidil should be a last resort because it is a potent vasodilator, should be used with beta blocker and diuretic, and it has a frightening side effect in form of generalized anasarca, and there have been reports of generalized anasarca, pericardial effusion and hirsutism. Now, mineralocorticoid receptor antagonist. Their use is consistent with the report of high prevalence of primary aldosterone in patients with resistant hypertension. Mineralocorticoid receptor antagonists provide significant antihypertensive benefit when added to the existing multi-drug regime. One should switch to a regime relying on spironolactone, and multiple studies have attested its efficacy, especially in patients with obstructive sleep apnea. It offers additional benefit in form of its anti-proteinuric effect and improves heart failure survival. There are some of the patients do report gynecomastia and should not be used if the creatinine is more than 2.5 or potassium is more than 5. And very recently, last year, there was a big large size study, Pathway 2, which was concluded and stated that spironolactone, this was a study was spironolactone versus placebo bisoprolol doxorubicin, and this study concluded that spironolactone was most effective add-on drug for treatment of resistant hypertension, and superiority of spironolactone support a primary role of sodium retention in this condition. Combination, one can add this spironolactone with chlorthalidone so that hyperkalemic effect of spironolactone is taken care, and there is a synergistic effect of the two drugs. Preferred antihypertensive combination in this patient with resistant hypertension are a RAS inhibitor and a calcium channel blocker, or a RAS inhibitor and diuretic, a RAS inhibitor and a calcium channel blocker plus diuretic. Acceptable combination would be beta blocker and diuretic, calcium channel blocker and diuretic, dual calcium channel blocker, that is dihydropyridine and non-dihydropyridine agent. Unacceptable combinations are dual RAS blockade, that is a receptor blocker plus ACE inhibitors. RAS inhibitor plus beta blocker is not a very ideal combination, and beta blocker plus anti-adrenergic drugs are not a good choice. There are some of the new drugs like darusentan, LCZ-C96, and there are three investigational drugs. This LCZ-C96 is already approved for treatment of congestive heart failure, and it is going to be in the market in next month. But these other two drugs are very investigational, and these are the endothelial receptor antagonists, and in a study they have shown this darusentan has been shown to reduce the blood pressure in a incremental dosing pattern, but it has a frightening side effect. Other than edema and fluid retention, there has been instances of sudden cardiac death. There are some of the interventional management of patient with resistant hypertension like renal artery stenting, renal denervation, baroreceptor activation, and arteriovenous coupler which is implanted in iliac vessel. As far as the stent is concerned, there was a very conclusive study in 2013 which stated clearly that effective medical therapy should be the first line of treatment in patient with presumed renovascular hypertension. Only for those patients who failed medical therapy or unable to tolerate medical therapy, stenting remains a reasonable option. Then another interventional treatment is a sympathetic denervation of this renal artery by radiofrequency, putting a catheter, and there are sympathetic network which is being denervated with the help of radiofrequency current. There has been a study, the Simplicity 1 was a proof of efficacy study, and in this study there was a blood pressure reduction, but this study, despite its encouraging result, it did not include a control group, and it was not a blinded study, and placebo effect could not be excluded. Therefore, there was a Simplicity 2 study, and that also shown that there was a significant fall in blood pressure, but non-blinded study, that was Simplicity 3, was very neutral, and there was not much of difference between the medical arm and interventional arm. So the efficacy of this sympathetic denervation is still a questionable. It's need a bigger, large size study without any sample bias. Another is this baroreflex, by putting a device at the carotid bifurcation which acts on through the brain. It acts on all the three axes, heart, kidney and vessel, and therefore it brings down the blood pressure. That is Revo device. It is a new technology, still investigational. It may be useful in future in some of the non-compliant and those patients who are intolerant. There is another interventional method, that is a arteriovenous coupling, putting a coupler in this iliac vessel junction, and this is a very new but it needs a proper study and conclusive data. So if we conclude this patient with the hypertension, all those patients whose blood pressure is found, office blood pressure is found to be elevated beyond the goal, that is systolic more than 150, diastolic more than 90, ideally we should have ambulatory blood pressure monitoring, and if it is found that with treatment their pressure is controlled. Some of these patients would have elevated office pressure. Ambulatory blood pressure monitoring shows that their daytime blood pressure is still normal. They do not need treatment. They are the truly white coat effect. Some of these patients who will have ambulatory blood pressure monitoring, they fall into the category of uncontrolled hypertension. They are the one who need to have an appropriate combination in appropriate doses to control the blood pressure. Preferably one of the drugs should be diuretic. One should ensure compliance on the part of the patients, emphasize on lifestyle modification, and still if the pressure is uncontrolled, then there is a need for search for any secondary cause of hypertension. Take out the substance which may be interfering with blood pressure control, and go for this escalation of pharmacological management in form of optimizing the diuretic, using the mineralocorticoid, add adrenoreceptor blocker if pressure is not controlled. In case if it's still not controlled, then use one of the centrally acting alpha antagonists or vasodilator, and in case if it is not controlled, then one of this trial, it can be one of the method can be tried on this patient, interventional method. Thank you.